Chapter 12. Road Disturbance. An hour later, they found themselves traveling once again. The carriage ride was bumpy. The group had been traveling for over 2 hours on rough terrain. No one else seemed bothered, only Kai. To pass the time, Kai would occasionally use gravity pillar on random objects, not letting his already low mana dip too far. 2 beasts were pulling the carriage. They had some kind of natural hard plating all around their bodies. While they appeared threatening, they were very docile instead, eating food directly out of Kai's hand before they left the ranch. Plated bovine, forging level 3. "I see you have unlocked your magic, young master Kai," indicated Steve. "I can sense the use of the mana, but I can't rightly tell what you're doing." "I'm using gravity magic." "Gravity magic, eh? That's quite something. Ain't ever met someone with gravity magic." Kai sat straighter, finding pride in the compliment. "If you don't mind me asking, how long have you worked as carriers for the village?" "Believe we are approaching our 40th year." He looked to his companion, who gave him a reassuring nod. "Why don't you tell him the story of how you entered into our service?" His dad spoke up for the first time in an hour. "Well, to start with, some 40 years ago my wife and I were attacked. Back then we ran our own caravan transporting goods to cities and towns. Weren't humans that attacked us, they can be reasoned with. Instead, we were being chased down by ash wolves, nasty beasts that only appear during an ashfall. We ran as fast as we could, but they stuck to us. We didn't stop, even though it felt like hours. Found ourselves at the edge of the mist. Knew the rumors that all who enter vanish, so we gambled anyways and entered. Still, the wolves followed. After only a minute in the mists, our pursuers were slaughtered. We didn't see what happened, but we could hear the cry of the wolves. I'll never forget those cries, rightly haunted me for years. Shortly after, we found ourselves surrounded by some of your village guards. After explaining our situation, we found ourselves meeting the chief, your grandfather. He offered us a job as carriage drivers. Would have likely died had we declined. We accepted after considering how our carriage and property had been destroyed. A house was built for us at the edge of the mists. We have been here since." Turning to his dad, Kai asked, "Is it true that they would have died if they declined?" Nodding his head, Octavian replied, "Yes. One of the core tenets of the village is all intruders must be killed to protect ourselves and our secrecy. Why do you think that even though our home is between the Heart Empire and the Ashbourne Kingdom, 2 warring kingdoms, neither will travel through our domain to get to the other? The reputation of the illusionary Misty region is even more notorious than the Ashbourne Mountain region. Better chance of surviving through the Ashbourne Mountain range than making it through our home." Kai could see Betrica and Steve shiver. So strange. How do they defend against intruders? There are bound to be very powerful people that have entered our territory before. After a few minutes of silence, Betrica finally called out, "Roads at last." She gave Kai a knowing wink. The carriage traveled up a small hill onto a paved stone road. Immediately the bumpiness stopped. With a sigh of relief, Kai closed his eyes, intending to get some rest. "Young Master Kai, wake up," Betrica hissed. Kai's eyes flung open. He looked around and instantly noticed that his father was missing. Garen appeared on edge, with a hand resting on his sword in the scabbard, ready to pull it at any second as his eyes shifted left to right. Where Steve appeared nervous, his wife showed the opposite. Her hands remained steady as she steered the bovine straight down the road. Judging from his missing father and the fact that everyone was on edge, Kai surmised they were under threat of attack. As if on cue, a loud voice called out, "Hello?" A group of seedy-looking humans stepped out from the brush, standing in their path on the road. There were at least a dozen men all around, some smirking, while others looked on impassively. Some of their armor was stained with blood. It was a familiar sight Kai knew by heart. This was clearly not their first time doing this. Identifying the visible people, they all ranged between the Foundation realm and higher than he could identify. Kai settled his nerves as he observed Betrica, who still appeared calm. Either she was an expert actor, or she was not worried about the group before them. In fact, looking closely, he could see the smallest uptilt of the side of her lip. One of the men stepped forwards. "I think you can guess how this will go. Unload your valuables and coin, and you can leave unharmed. The supposed leader opened his arms wide as if he was giving them a merciful option. He was armed with 2 swords, one on each side of his hip. "Sorry, sir, ain't no valuables here. Just delivering this child here to school," Stephen spoke aloud, nodding his head towards Kai. "School? Must be that fancy academy in the capital. The boy must have coin if he is going there. Give it to us now and their swords." "This is the only time I'll ask," the leader of the bandits spoke calmly. He didn't stutter as he delivered an ultimatum. Not waiting for a response, the group of bandits began pulling out their weapons to further their point that they would attack if the group didn't comply. Shaking her head, Kai could hear Betrica mutter, "Go!" All at once, 6 of the bandits exploded into dark red mists. Yells of terror joined in with the blasts. Garen leapt off the carriage, his longsword in hand as he charged toward the leader. 4 identical blades of ash appeared above him, which all began attacking other bandits as if they had their own minds. To his left, Kai could see balls of fire splattering across a translucent barrier around their carriage, blocking each blast as they exploded against the shield. Cracks appeared after each consecutive blast, only for the cracks to vanish shortly after as the barrier repaired itself. Kai froze. For the first time ever in this life, the enemy was truly beyond him. His rational mind told him he would be a hindrance if he went out there and tried to help. The most likely result would be his death. With a squeeze of his fists, he sat back down and watched the end of the battle. "Kai, come here," his father called out from the right side of the carriage. Obeying his father, Kai stepped off the carriage onto the ground. The smell of blood and iron was heavy in the air, bodies' parts were scattered about, and not one body lay complete. Although it had been a while, the smell of battle and carnage was familiar to Kai. His face took on an indifferent expression. There would be no mercy for those who would threaten him or his family. Kneeling on the stone path was a relatively unharmed young man. His father stood behind him, sword extended against his neck. Kai noted that he wasn't much older than himself, likely a year or 2 at most. Accompanying the strong smell of urine was a wet spot on his pants. "Human, foundation level 52. Collect their goods and coin, Steve. All the coin will go towards Kai's future tuition," his father said before he turned to his son, waiting in silence. The young man was shaking head to toe. Tears streamed down his face as he muttered, "Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me," over and over again. "I didn't do anything. I only joined them the day before." "Fight him, son, and kill him," his father commanded, ignoring the pleading man. "I had not planned on doing this, but this is a good opportunity. You need not feel guilty about killing him. His life was forfeit the moment he and his gang attacked us." Inwardly, Kai was shocked his father would choose to do this. He hadn't foreseen this trial of events, but he wouldn't pass up such an opportunity. The young man had been spared for this purpose. And judging from the hard look in his father's eyes, if Kai didn't fight him, he had no doubt the young man would die immediately. "This is the beginning of my path again. I can't show mercy for those who would do me harm." His breath quickened as he pulled his sword out of its scabbard. Holding it with one hand, he pointed it at the young man. "If you defeat me, they will allow you to leave unharmed." He didn't have the heart to tell the young man that he was playing him. No matter what, the bandit would die today. The young man likely knew Kai was full of shit, but there would be a part of him that would hold on to that small hope of surviving. The harder the bandit fought, the more levels Kai might draw out of the fight, assuming he won. After all, there were no levels to be gained from an enemy who didn't fight back. It had been the same way for criminals he had hunted down and given up in his past life. He always gave them a choice to die on their feet or die on their knees. He just hoped his dad went along with his plan. After all, he was contradicting what he had just said. The young man's head shot up. Hope spilled into his eyes. Likely he had identified Kai and thought his chances of winning were very good, because he was twice the level Kai was. The bandit twisted his head to look at Kai's father, likely wondering if he would uphold his son's words. His father gave Kai a look and then nodded. "But only if you win. Now get your weapon and let's do this," Kai said. His father had a small smile behind the young man. Vanishing, he reappeared a few meters away from the two. The young man grabbed a spear with a black spearhead and a wooden shaft off the ground. Taking a stance, he held his spear forward with both arms. "What are you guys waiting for a signal? Begin already," called out his father. The bandit shot forwards, already proving his speed to be faster than Kai's, but not enough to instantly determine the winner. The spearhead blurred as he randomly thrust it at Kai. Deflecting one stab after another, the young bandit was laying on the pressure. The strikes were fast, but sloppy and poorly aimed. Leaning back, one spear thrust went too far over his head. Grabbing onto the shaft below the spearhead with his offhand, Kai held it in place long enough to slash down towards the man's neck with his sword. A sudden pain assaulted Kai's mind without warning, forcing Kai to cease his attack as he clutched his head in pain. Through squinting eyes, he could see the man smirking. Kai felt the spear shaft ripped from his grip before it was once again thrust at him. Stumbling back, Kai dodged while clutching his head. "Fucking mind mages," he muttered. Shooting forward, he ducked under the spear. His sword slashed the mage's legs, making contact. A scream of pain rang out as the headache instantly vanished. Kai didn't pause for a moment, his sword slashing into the neck of the man. He felt little resistance as he cut through bone. The head bounced for a few meters before rolling into the brush off the road. The body swayed for a second before dropping with a thump. "You have slain human Foundation level 52. Vanguard has reached Foundation level 24. Vanguard has reached Foundation level 27. Kai flicked his sword down, splashing the blood off. The battle had been quick, yet slightly difficult. He hadn't intentionally intended not to use any skills, it had just worked out that way. The level difference had given the young psionic bandit the advantage, but his odd build had been detrimental. Had he focused more on improving his psionic magics, Kai likely would have come out of that battle with something more than a small headache and a few points of health lost. With 4 additional levels, he quickly assigned his stats, splitting it up so he could be more versatile for now until he discovered his combat style. Though he still planned to keep his strength and vitality the highest in order to prevent an imbalance of his gravity and body's durability. Vitality 50-52, Strength 45, Dexterity 20, Endurance 25, Intelligence 30, Wisdom 25. "You knew he was a mind mage?" Kai asked his father, his tone bitter. "Of course, I have a skill that can sense that much at least," Octavian said. "Would have been nice if you warned me," Kai mumbled. "Why would I? You're not always going to have the luxury of knowing the skills or elements of your opponent beforehand," Octavian countered. Kai's annoyance fled from him. His father was right, of course. Combat was often messy and unpredictable. More often than not, he would not have knowledge of his enemies before fighting them, monsters included. Kai had momentarily forgotten the challenge of fighting something unknown. The soft and easy life of living in the village had inadvertently dulled his hard edge when fighting for his life. He was sure it would come back to him in time. "Are you doing okay, son?" Octavian's tone turned soft. "Yay, why? He didn't hit me." "That's not what I'm talking about. You just took a human life for the first time." Kai froze. "It's not like I can tell Dad that wasn't my first time killing someone." Furrowing his brows, Kai told his father a half-truth. "I'm fine, really. I just treated him like any monster I have killed. If I didn't kill him, then he might hurt my family or others." That's a good way to think about it. "But if you need someone to talk to about it, all you need to do is ask," Octavian said sympathetically. Kai stared at his father. This was his first time seeing him in proper armor. He was completely outfitted in a full silver metal plate from his toes to his neck. The only thing he was lacking was a helmet. His hands, arms, and legs were all covered. On his chest was a crest of a pair of red and golden wings with 2 swords crossing each other in the middle. Red streaks ran down his pristine-looking armor, signifying he had killed a few people during the battle. Have you killed a lot of people, Dad?" Kai asked, his tone hesitant. It was a rude question to ask. "Yes, and no. I've killed plenty in my short time alive, but compared to others, I haven't killed many. I've done what has been required of me." Octavian's armor melted off his body, turning into liquid metal until it formed into a ball in front of him. The ball spun until the blood vanished from its surface, after which it touched his chest and began spreading out over his body as his armor formed once again, this time without the blood. Standing before him, his father placed both his hands on Kai's shoulders. His eyes were full of empathy. "Let me tell you what my father told me after my first kill," he said. "The laws of these worlds state that only the fittest shall survive. The weak shall become the foundation for the strong. Only those who accept killing and embrace it will survive and prosper. But one must not stand shoulder to shoulder with death, else they lose themselves." Giving his son a pat on the shoulder, he turned and began heading back to the carriage.